Okay, we'll get started here. I'll call to order the select board meeting of June 9th, 2021. Let me go over the script here. As a preliminary matter, this select board meeting, permitted to confirm all the members and persons anticipated on the agenda and present and can hear me. Select board members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Go as I see you. Melissa Murphy.
Here.
Kristie Ferrantella.
Here.
Here.
Oh, you guys are frozen. Uh-oh, I'm frozen. Can you hear me?
Matt Fee here.
Yeah, I think you're freezing up a little, Jason.
Yep. You guys froze too. Okay. Did Melissa say yes? And Kristie? Okay. Matt Fee?
Here.
Okay. And we'll go over staff. When I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Erica Mooney.
Here.
Libby Gibson.
Here.
Greg Tipton.
Here.
David Gray.
Here. Good evening.
Good day. Vincent Murphy.
Here.
Paula Leary.
Here.
Chuck Larson.
Here.
Roberto Santamaria.
Here.
Okay. And anticipated speakers we have online here. See Tom Montgomery.
Here.
Linda Williams.
Here.
Lee Saperstein.
Here.
And Brooke Mohr.
I'm here.
Thank you all. This open meeting of the select board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth. Haven't done this in a while. Let me flip through here. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting of the select board, it's convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Please be aware that people may be able to see you. Take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. And I think that's good. I think that's usually what Dawn reviews. Libby, over to you.
Thank you very much. So as far as announcements go, as we mentioned, this meeting is being video and audio recorded. The annual town election is scheduled for next Tuesday, June 15th. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. The select board swearing in ceremony is scheduled for next Wednesday, June 16th at 10 a.m. It will be upstairs in the courtroom of the town building. There's no select board meeting next Wednesday. As discussed last week by our DEI director, next Friday, June 18th, will be recognized as a holiday, Juneteenth. And we heard about this last week. There is going to be some information online about this, and there will be some events scheduled for the actual Juneteenth day, which is Saturday, June 19th. And our sewer director, I believe, is he? There he is. Has a quick update on the Surfside Road sewer project.
Good evening. Thank you, Libby. Things are going along very well now. We are nearing Tashma Lane. We should be passing through Tashma Lane intersection tonight. So starting tonight around 9 p.m. and going through tomorrow, access will only be able to be going through McLean via Bartlett Road. The access, what we've been allowing everyone to come from First Way down to Tashma. Once we get through that intersection tonight, will be closed for tonight and then for tomorrow night, and then for a good portion of next week. So access will be from the Bartlett Road and through McLean. Other than that, they've been able to pick up a little bit of speed because of the shallowness, but now it's going to start to get deep again, and it's going well.
Thanks, David. We do have one additional announcement that came in after the agenda was published, which is from our Coastal Resilience Coordinator, Vince Murphy. Vince?
Thank you very much, Libby. Unfortunately, I'm not able to turn on my camera, and I apologize for that. It won't allow me to. So I want to give a super quick update. Oh yes, may I start my video? Thank you. No, still didn't work. Okay, not to worry. So the Coastal Resilience Plan is having its second virtual open house. It is still going to be a virtual open house. It is going to be a Zoom event, just like the first one was in January. In January, we had over 200 people register and over 160 people attend. I would clearly like to beat those numbers this time. The registration is required for this event, and you can go on to the Coastal Resilience Plan page on the town website and find the link to register so that you can attend. Also, there's going to be advertisements in the newspaper, plenty on social media, and I'm trying to get us involved in several newsletters to get the word out about it. The purpose of this virtual open house is partly to go over some of the vulnerabilities that were identified in the mid-project report, and then take those vulnerabilities and try and work towards solutions. This is largely going to be geared towards solutions, and we need a lot of community input to go over that. I hope select board members and everyone from as many people from the public can attend. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vince. I also forgot to mention, back to Juneteenth, the landfill will be closed to the public on the actual holiday of Saturday, June 19th. Closed to the public, open to haulers only. And we've got a lot of social media going out on that.
Thank you, Libby. So next is a follow-up on Select Board public comment, May 26, 2021, Select Board meeting, public comment on Essex Road detour concerns.
Just to give a quick intro on this, it occurred to me last week when we were doing the agenda, getting the agenda ready, that sometimes things come up under public comment and or board reports that are followed up on or not followed up on or reported on or not reported on. And sometimes board members ask specifically, what happened with such and such that came up the prior week? And we hadn't really done anything about it because it didn't seem like that action was necessary. But I'm trying to pay a lot more attention to that and actually put an item on the agenda so that there can be some specific follow-up so that people don't think their issue went unaddressed if it's something that we need to get back to them on. Sometimes things are rhetorical and they don't necessarily, I guess, need a response. But when people have specifically asked something and we're told, we'll get back to you, then we need to get back to them. So I'm coming up with this way to see how it works to get back to them. So at your meeting on May 26th under public comment, some citizens on Essex Road raised some issues about Essex Road being used as a detour for the sewer project. That road is no longer being used for a detour right at the moment, as I understand it. But David and I talked a little bit about it, and it is going to be used as a detour road for future projects that are on the kind of near horizon, which David can refer to. We also talked about putting some social media out there, and thank you to Melissa Murphy, this was her suggestion. When neighborhood roads are being used as a detour, get social media out there to let the citizens who are using those roads know to please be mindful and careful driving through those neighborhoods, because they are neighborhoods. And, you know, there's children and there's pets and pedestrians, and please don't drive crazily through the neighborhoods to get out of the detour. Please be respectful of those neighborhoods. David, you want to give us a quick update about Essex being used as a detour?
I do, thank you. And thank you everyone for bringing this up. And I spent a lot of time the last week learning about private roads and easements and public ways. And so the Essex Road was one of our only options that we could do to get around that one section of Surfside. During that first piece of construction, we've now passed Violet Road, so Essex is not being used anymore. Actually, a lot of detour traffic is now coming down through Somerset and Friendship on the other end. Essex is kind of unique. It's half private and half of a public road because of the Winter Park down at the other end Essex. This original subdivision was originally filed in 1996 as Ernestina Way 2 subdivision approval, and was granted approval by the planning board in June of 1997. And on the easement, the grant of easement in the Registry of Deed books 555, page 256, it was pretty clear in all my research that the land known as Essex Road being shown on lot 43 upon plan 51G at Nantucket deeds for all purposes for which passage or repassage by foot in vehicles or otherwise, and installation, maintenance, repair, use, and replacement of underground utilities and services. We have taken that to give us the ability to allow us to use that detour. Could we have had maybe more public comment than what we did, or public notification? We will definitely try harder the next time for sure. We will be blocking Bartlett Road. If not before this project gets done by June 25th, it'll be in the fall when we have to run 250 feet or so of pipe up Bartlett Road, new pipe. And again, when we come through this area with the third sewer force main, which is going out to bid hopefully before the summer, and construction may very well start next fall. That's going to be a fairly long project, so it may not all happen immediately in next winter, but it will come, or we'll have to shut down Bartlett sections again, and Surfside Road. We won't be as deep as we had to be with this one, but that'll be another project coming in the future. You know, if we had created any hardships on anyone, I'm sorry that it got to that point, but we took every precaution, signage, and everything else that we could to make this transition as easily as possible. You said next time we can try better, maybe put some more signs up that say slow. We can try our best in the future to do maybe a little more with some signage.
Jason, did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Don. Donna's back. Madam Chair is back.
I'm sorry, I was late.
No problem. I had a really smooth experience going through the criteria. First off, I wanted to say I really like the follow-up agenda item, because there's another scenario, Libby, where we might get back to one person, but now 15 or 20 people are thinking about it because it was discussed at a town meeting or a select board meeting. So I think it's nice to have this as another, we could make it as an announcement, but a follow-up and when it happened. I think that's great for this scenario. Thank you, David. I know you're always really good at thinking these things through. You're knocking on doors. Since the day I met you, you've always done that. In this, I just think we can learn from it and have, criteria, the way to mitigate anything in the future for detours. I don't think residents want a big giant sign, flashing sign, but maybe they do if it's going to make it safer. Or the police put the speed limit, whatever that's called, the speed limit radar kind of installations, things like that in the future would be helpful.
No, thank you. This is a learning experience. This is one of the first major projects to come through where we had to create a bunch of detours. The bigger one is going to be the sewer force main, which is going to have a lot of challenging cases on its own, of complete streets blocked off for numerous weeks or months. We have learned, and our staff engineer from Weston and Sampson and the construction crew have been as thoughtful and as courtesy as they could be. And I think all in all, it went very well. But speed is an issue, and I'm seeing it over on Friendship. Cars are coming off the dirt road end or whatever, and they are just going like they can just to go around the detour, which there's a lot of kids around, and we learned some things on this one.
So
Sarah Ellis put her hand up twice, but it went back down. I just want to make sure that I go to her if she wanted to speak, and then Matt had his hand up.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say I don't live on Essex, but I've seen on social media a lot of the concerns. And it seemed like one of the suggestions or the concerns was the fact that the speed bumps that do exist there are no longer painted or, signified or signaled in any way. And that maybe that even in of itself would help people to remember to slow down. That's all.
Thank you, Sarah. Matt, did you want to make a comment?
Just a quick comment. The other way to slow cars down is you skinny the road. You take a couple of those concrete barriers, and maybe the only thing that slows cars down when they're in a hurry is if they're afraid they're going to hurt their car. So if you put the barrier and make them slow down with a couple pieces of plywood saying "careful kids," they'll slow to get through, and they'll keep they won't get their speed up, as quickly. If it's no parking anywhere and they're driving straight through, it's a straight shot, they're going to go as fast as they can go. So I just think there's physical ways to do it.
Thank you. Melissa?
Thanks, Dawn. Thank you, Libby and David, for following up on this. And I love the new agenda item. And I appreciate your attention to detail for the next time. And actually, I appreciate the way you did it this time. I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of personal responsibility that has to, be accounted for, and anything we can do to help spread the message next time we have these kind of detours, I think is just going to emphasize the fact that these are being detoured through small neighborhoods. So, but thank you for your attention to it. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Melissa. And thanks everyone for the follow-up and the suggestions, and hopefully we can just learn from it and do better as we go forward.
I have written them all down, Madam Chair, so I now have some more stuff to think about in the next project. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. It looks like we have one more follow-up in regard to the face coverings on public transit.
I think that Paula is on, and also right after the meeting last week when this was raised as a question, we got an email from the Department of Public Health explaining what face covering requirements are and what's exempted and what is not. And it seems that ferry transportation and other modes of public transportation are not exempt from face covering requirements. I was in contact with the Steamship Authority. They confirmed that as their understanding is that face requirements remain in effect until further notice. And I think the NRTA administrator has some information about it for the Ride the Wave.
Paula?
Sure. Hi, everyone. We are NRTA, and it's an airport. It's basically a public travel order from falling under the TSA because it deals with, masks in airports, boarding areas, public transportation, which we are, is thrown under that. So we're following the TSA directive. We have been since it came out, I don't even remember when, a long time ago. A recent order was issued on April 30th, extending the mask order through September 13th of 2021. They do have to be masks. They can't be bandanas or scarves. They have to be an actual face mask. They're required at Greenhound, basically any public transportation facilities. So Greenhound, the waiting areas, the bus stops, and on the buses. And we have had this posted, I don't know, for a long, long time. When the directives came out, we had to develop policies and respond to TSA to make sure that we were doing what the directive ordered us to do, and we have been.
Madam Chair, sorry, I asked Roberto about this as well. Roberto, did you want to add anything?
No, just that the orders are in place for these are things that are out of our jurisdiction. It's not us locally putting this in place. I wanted to make sure that was reiterated. But we're moving forward with it, and I think we're set. I think Paula nailed it.
We could probably segue right into your COVID-19 report.
All right, sounds good. Really fantastic news that has really been coming out is we've had 0 cases in the last 7 days. We've only had 3 cases in the last 14 days. But the big part of what we were seeing was that the most recent sewer test that we received showed non-detect. There was COVID was not detected in the sewer, which means what that tells me is vaccines work. This is the biggest proof right here. The vaccines are working and they're doing what they have to do. So we're in really great shape. One of the things that I wanted to put out there is that as far as the doses go that we're doing, we've reached the 10th, I have it over here, 9,745 fully vaccinated individuals on the island, which is really good. Those are people who mark 02554 as their home address. And then since I'm pulling it up right now, since our local orders have gone through, since the town has picked up dosing, we have issued, and of course it's slowing down. So never mind. There it is, patients vaccinated. We have given about 200 vaccines, so I'm rounding up. So we have already, since the town has taken over, we've given over 200 vaccines at this point. So we're in good shape. And then Health Imperatives is also providing doses. Dan's Pharmacy is providing Moderna doses. And we are working to getting extra doses brought over to Dr. Pavi at Dental Arts. And then lastly, I'm going to quickly share my screen. We've had a few questions about how to get information on where the vaccine clinics are. So I will pull it up on our main website, on the town website, which you should be seeing on our screen, right on the home page. Just go to the drop down at the top, coronavirus, and then just click COVID vaccine. And then that should take you straight to where the vaccine clinic is, what time. It's in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. We also give the contact information for Heather, the contact information for Jericho for any questions, and then the other sites on where you can get vaccines on island. And then with that, I'll leave it open to questions. Either one.
All right, Kristie, yeah, and then Jason.
Thank you. And thank you, Roberto. That's really good news to hear that our COVID cases are down. I just had a question for the public. So when getting a vaccine, if you're trying to get a Pfizer for a child, is there a specific clinic you should go to, or how should you go about being able to schedule that?
You don't have to schedule it. If you would like to schedule it, please email us at health@nantucket-ma.gov. And then if you can also email Heather Francis if you need to schedule a time outside of the regular clinic. But that Saltmarsh Clinic from 5 to 7 on Wednesdays, it's going on right now. If you're watching at home and you need somebody vaccinated, you have an hour and a half to get to the Saltmarsh for today. It is walk-in, so no appointment necessary. We do schedule your second dose, but that first dose is walk-in. Anyone who needs it and wants it can just come in. And then as far as the other youth are going as well, Moderna has actually applied for a full approval status, which hopefully by around the end of July, early August, would make the vaccine available for people ages 2 and older.
That's great news.
Thank you.
Jason?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's great to hear that 10,000 people are vaccinated. And I know that number is a lot higher who is here. Just in the organization I work with, 25 employees got here in the last 2 weeks and they were already vaccinated. So it's that number of 10,000 is, obviously much higher if the sewer BioBot report is coming up as 0 over and over again. So that's great news. Thank you for that. And would you just explain Heather's role? I know it's a new position. I don't know if everybody knows that we have this position and what she does.
Absolutely. So Heather's official title is the Community Health Clinical Administrator, which what that jargon is for is to say she's running all the community health aspects for the island that we didn't have before. In other towns, we have public health nurses. In other towns, Heather will be filling in that role as the public health nurse, but her position is so much more. This position would also be once COVID is kind of pushed aside or slowed down is a better way to say it. Heather will be taking over the general vaccination program, which we should be able to, through the state of Massachusetts, issue doses for measles, mumps, and rubella, flu vaccines, polio vaccines, Tdap. We should be able all the school vaccines through the public health department. We would be able to work on mental health and substance abuse issues, and we're going to have her trained on mental health first aid. We're going to have Jericho trained on mental health first aid as well, for both youth and adults. Everything from elder get up and go tests, things like blood pressure screenings, blood pressure clinics, the glucose screenings and things like that for diabetics. And then also providing a lot of the public training. We're hoping to get her trained as a trainer for CPR and first aid, choke saver, some of our ServSafe programs, things like that. All of that educational aspect that also ties into the regulatory part of the health department. So it's really a big position.
If I can say one more thing, Madam Chair, it is really big, Roberto, and I want to just give you props on that and your leadership, because I remember, I think it was your second month here when you moved and we went out to lunch and I asked, like, what's some things that you'd like to do here that we don't? And that was one of the first things out of your mouth was kind of move the health department in public health and prevention. And so you've been doing it all along, but that's it's a big victory. So well done to you and Heather and everybody who's involved.
It was one of the major priorities in our 5-year strategic plan.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thomas Barada had his hand up, but he took it back down. Tom, did you have a question?
I was going to wait until, hold on. Can you hear me?
That's fine. I can come back to you.
I think, right?
He wanted
public
comment.
Oh, okay, no problem. Are there any other questions for Roberto? Is there anything from the Economic Task Force or Kristie?
Yes. So we did meet today and we discussed a little bit about the Tap into Technology grant that we're working with the Martha's Vineyard Chamber, the town and Nantucket Chamber. So we have 12 Nantucket businesses that were recipients, and everybody's moving forward and submitting plans and working with consultants. And it's just been a really great collaboration with state funding to help the local chambers and local businesses. We also talked a little bit about how we could start looking into other grants. So we have Karen Maycumber, who does the NICE program at the Chamber, the entrepreneurial program. She's looking into other grant programs, either through the state or the SBA, that we might be able to use for future years, and a lot of things around collaboration. So we really like this model of working with the Vineyard Chamber and want to continue to do that as much as possible. We also talked about the future of this program. I know this was a question the select board asked 2 weeks ago, and we really feel like our mission has been accomplished. What we had set out to do was to prepare businesses for a successful season. And with the COVID restrictions being lifted, we feel that businesses are prepared. We still have the town website to notify residents. Our big thing this summer is patience. We know that businesses are understaffed and it's going to be a busy one. But we felt as a committee, we're going to put a pause on meeting, that we fulfilled the mission of that committee. But we did want to have a future select board agenda item to talk about how this committee could be transformed into something in the future. We all felt that the past year and a half has really shown how the town and the chamber and businesses can work together. And so we thought something similar to the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee, we could have a business advisory committee made up of different business owners in different industries, and just kind of have that connection between Amy Baxter and Leslie Snow and businesses. They said that line of communication was so vital over the past year and a half, and they didn't want to see that stop as this committee stopped. So I just wanted to put it out there that hopefully over the summer we could talk about kind of what that future committee could look like. And there was also a need for a licensing board. And so maybe we could discuss the two together or separate. Thanks.
Thank you, Kristie. Are there any other COVID-19 related reports or comments tonight? I'm seeing none. Thank you all. Public comment for items not related to COVID-19 and otherwise not on our agenda for discussion. Mr. Barada, did you still have something?
Yes, I did. Can you hear me, Dawn?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I'm raising some issues in regard to some road repairs and some road issues. Recently, the catch basin that's on the Milestone Road on the inbound lane that CNC put in last year, just about a year ago, has failed and has a massive sinkhole that's causing issues. People have hit it. I hit it. I was jarring. And then in regard to sunken catch basins, I had a conversation with Rob a couple of years ago about it when there was a line item for $100,000 for road repair for storm drainage repairs. And there was discussion of trying to raise the storm drains that have sunk. New Lane being a particular one, New Lane and Meadow Lane. That's an issue. There's also some other issues in regard to sunken trenches. And from what I understand from Rob, he said that there's no money for road permits that are being charged to actually create a fund for trench repairs. The only person that's actually fought to get trench repairs was David Gray on a really bad one that was on Bartlett a couple of years ago. And David really pushed to get it fixed. So thank you, David, in regard to that. But in regard to this, you know, we just transferred $225,000 during the town meeting from a warrant article from 2017 to a 2019 island-wide road repair initiative. Can we allocate some of that money to fix some of these catch basins? And one of the major one that everybody complains to me about and that I see all the time is the one that's outside of the yacht club during the new sewer project when we had to fix the new sewer line. All the big boats have to go around that catch basin because if they go in it, the odds are they're going to rip up the trailers. So they have to wait for traffic to stop and give space so that they can go around. And it's really causing traffic issues on the weekends when people are pulling their boats in and out. So I just thought if we got that $225,000 allocated, can we put it towards road repair? Because we've spent enough on bike paths. I think it's time we actually get money for road repair. Thank you.
Thank you. We will follow up on this, but just quickly, the sinkhole on Milestone is scheduled for repair tomorrow per Erica Mooney.
Thank you very much, Dawn.
You're welcome. Are there any other public comments this evening? Okay, seeing none. No new business, approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts.
Move
I think
approval.
there might be some questions on the contracts, so let's just do the minutes and treasury warrants if we could.
Move approval.
Thank you. Is there a second? All those in favor by roll call, Melissa Murphy.
Aye.
Jason Bridges.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Kristie Ferrantella.
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously on items 1 and 2. And then approval of pending contracts. I believe that Mr. Mandel has a question on one of the contracts. I'd like to recognize him.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I wanted to offer a few comments about the CDM Smith Phase 2 agreement that's on the agenda. The three separate documents that comprise this contract, there's three pieces. There's a a payment schedule, the agreement form, and then what they call the Phase 2A draft for review, statement of work. These are important pieces of a much larger effort to understand the island's risks from PFAS, and I was able to see these copies today, and I wanted to make some observations based on the brief time I've had to read them and offer some suggestions moving forward. The bottom line is that I know how important it is to move forward, and I would suggest that the decision to sign this scope of work be either belayed a little bit to address a few issues, or perhaps you guys can tweak it now, approve it conditionally. I discussed this with Mr. Larson earlier today, so he not be caught by surprise. And my comments that I'm going to make right now are not a criticism, but rather suggestions to make it better. While there's been input from town departments, it's a type of stakeholder review about the scope of work, there hasn't been any community or public stakeholder review or input, although the documents suggest that public stakeholder input might happen after the work is finished. Scoping decisions and discussions need to be, in my view, more inclusive of the ultimate stakeholders, the public, before this work is started. It appears to me that some of the scope regarding the proposed sampling plan that's being developed in this contract is a little lacking. It's not an actual sampling program, it's just a plan to do the sampling. In that regard, I see some elements that are not included that ought to be. For example, Nantucket is down gradient from the landfill's unmined cell. Groundwater and surface water flows from this source into our drinking water wells, where PFAS elements have already been detected. This report could help reinforce the need to include Nantucket drinking water wells in the Mass DEP's free drinking water well testing for PFAS elements. In addition, in the spirit of island-wide assessment, we all know that there are 20 existing groundwater sampling wells in the Nantucket community, in the Nantucket watershed, that ought to be considered for inclusion in this contract scope for sampling locations, or there ought to be some explanation why we won't include them. The documents mention the fire department due to the AFFF issues, where the product's been used in certain firefighting. But as the first CDM report notes, that product's been used during some of the landfill firefighting. Hence, I think sampling locations ought to include the events where those fires had been managed by the fire department. The first CDM report, which was posted about 3 months ago, 107 pages worth, still hasn't had an organized public community stakeholder involvement that I'm aware about. We're eager to participate. That report made 9 or 10 recommendations to the town for constructive action, but we don't know what's going to be done regarding those recommendations. Shouldn't we understand that before scoping the next phase, so the actions we take or start to take can be part of the basis for this next phase? I understand moving forward is critical, but so is transparency and inclusion. The scope in these documents, for example, mentions sampling sludge from the wastewater treatment plant facility, but we already know they contain PFAS. So would such sampling be duplicative, or is it intended to be confirming? We ought to know this. The scope ought to provide a little input regarding the types of filters best suited for capturing PFAS elements from drinking water. I only know of one type, but it ought to be part of this scoping document. Sometimes we try to give the public stakeholder input, but we only allow it after the fact. I think we miss an opportunity to involve the community from the onset for this type of work. Stakeholder input after the fact, after these reports are finished, is often troubling because the input is simply a kind of a venting. rather than an inclusive process. And while the CDM staff proposed for this work may never have been on Nantucket, all the more reason to consider some of the items I mentioned and some of the items that might be provided by other type of community input. In essence, a short hiatus or maybe a little tweaking by the select board now while you're signing this document won't cause unrecoverable delay. It could, however, create a kind of a more collaborative set of inputs from the community stakeholders, some of whom have experience and scientific backgrounds that it could at least lend an air of transparency and an air of inclusion. So I want to thank you for this time and for your consideration. And I hope that you find this helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ayesha Khan, is it on the same subject matter?
Hi, yes.
Hi.
Yes, it is. It is on the same subject matter.
Yes, no, please go ahead. I just wanted to hear from you before administration responds.
Sure. Okay. I agree with Mr. Mandel. And I guess my question was more of how fluid are these funds and where they're allocated towards? We just received the document today, so I'm just really quickly looking at it, and I am very supportive and very happy that we are looking into the PFAS situation, but I'm just slightly concerned about where some of the stakeholder input would go, and if there's some kind of flexibility that can be put into it, if perhaps the money could be used in different ways that the stakeholders and community members feel that it could be used towards, if there could be some kind of cushioning, or if the voting will be 100% today, and this is exactly where the funds would go. That's just more of my concern, because I think we could, or I would like to have some input as to where it's allocated.
You're looking on how flexible it is.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Libby?
We have our project manager for PFAS, Chuck Larson, on, and also Greg Tibden. They've both been working on this for over a year now. We would not recommend tabling this contract. We've worked very hard to put the scope together with CDM Smith. Chuck can speak to what phase one is all about. And the funding is possibly a little bit flexible, but we're going to need, quite a bit of funding going forward. We approved $700,000 for borrowing at the 2021 annual town meeting. This contract is, as you can see, well over half of that. And we probably are going to be going back to town meeting in the future for requests for additional funds. But Chuck, could you please speak to these concerns?
Right. So I do appreciate the comments of Bruce and Ayesha and the concerns. So I did talk to Bruce earlier today and had the opportunity to listen and clarify his concerns. I certainly understand where he's coming from and requesting more public involvement in the project and the projects going forward. And I've also had a chance to reflect on these comments and listen to the comments again now. I think it's helpful to remember we are in the initial steps of what will be a long-term project for identifying, testing, controlling, reducing, and eliminating PFAS on Nantucket. The statement of work in the contract tonight has identified and provided funds in tasks 7 and 8 for more extensive public involvement, public engagement, and stakeholder review. Those items that were mentioned earlier by Bruce are in the scope of work. They're not delineated, well-defined, because we have not gotten to that point yet. There's 700 hours, up to 700 hours available in those tasks. And that would be something that will be used as needed. If we don't need it, then we're certainly not going to spend it. But we did list some of the possible activities that would be included, but we really can't figure that out until we have our first couple of stakeholder meetings with the public. And so I would like to say, yeah, I believe we have those concerns covered in this current statement of work, although it doesn't explicitly say that. And, you know, having those explicit details, you know, with a project like this, it's completely an iterative process. You take a step forward, you learn, and then you decide, you know, what's in the next scope. And so this is essentially work for the next 6 to 9 months at the longest. So we're breaking the work into these short projects rather than one mega, you know, 5-year project. And so I guess the question is, do we want to, you know, hold up this contract for additional review? And I think I can say that based on the comments I've heard from Bruce and Ayesha is that, yeah, I don't think there's going to be much of an added benefit because we're going to be capturing that information going forward through the execution of this project.
Thank you, Chuck. Does anybody have questions for Chuck? Greg, do you have anything to add? Or Matt, you have a question?
I don't have a question, just a comment. I think Bruce makes a good point because sometimes when the public doesn't feel heard, even if the report is solid and good, there's a lack of trust in it. So I think that, you know, we are smart to listen, but I think because of what Chuck said, that there's a chance for public input as we're going. We're really at the beginning. This isn't set in stone. You know, we're going to be doing this for a while. I think we shouldn't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I think we should move forward with this tonight.
Thank you, Matt. Are there any other comments or questions? I mean, I'd like to see this not be held up, but I'd also like the public to feel like they have the input and that they're engaged. And I'm hearing that that is going to be the case. Just want to make sure that that's on the record. Does anyone want to make a motion on the pending contracts?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? All those in favor by roll call: Melissa Murphy.
Aye.
Jason Bridges.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Kristie Ferrantella.
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. The contracts carry unanimously. Thank you. Look forward to hearing more. Next up, we have the citizen departmental request for approval of MGL Chapter 268A, exemption for disclosure by special municipal employee of a financial interest. This is in your packet. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Madam Chair, I was just going to point out that when committee members become town employees or vice versa, this type of exemption is required because they are being paid.
Understood. Stephen Welch, did you want to make a comment?
Good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening, board members. No, I was just here in case there were any questions you might have.
Just to add a tiny little bit, this has been reviewed by town council and signed off on as being complete.
Thank you. Matt?
It's a general question. Who have we, the board makes special municipal employee designations. What groups are still in that category?
Matt, do you mean who's been designated as special municipal employees? We have a list.
Isn't the FinCom and ZBA? Which groups of? Is it individuals?
No individual committee members are special municipal employees. It's the entire committee, and we have a whole list of them. I don't have it right in front of me. Erica, do you have it right in front of you? I don't know if we can pull it up right this moment.
Yes, I do. So the designated special municipal employees are as follows: the Abatement Advisory Committee, the Affordable Housing Trust, Airport Commission, there's a Beach Vehicle Committee that's no longer, BPAC, Select Board, Call Firefighters, Capital Program, Cemetery Commission, Commission on Disability, CPC, CONCOM, Council on Aging, Cultural Council, FinCom, Government Review Committee, SHAB, HTC, Housing Authority, Water Commission, Park and Rec, planning board, REAC, roads and right-of-way, school committee, town moderator, traffic safety, tree advisory, visitor services, and ZBA. It's on the website on the boards, committees, and commissions page.
Right. And at some point, I think we should talk about, does it need to be all those boards? You know, some of this was appropriate when we're at 9,000-10,000 people. We're under 10. You know, where we are now, we may want to pare that down a bit. I do think there is an issue at times with, you know, on some of these boards, there's issues with people anyway. So.
Melissa?
Thank you, Dawn. If I could ask a question to Mr. Welch through you. Hi, Stephen, Melissa, Murphy. Do you see that any of your duties as a part-time inspector would be in conflict with your role on the HDC?
Thanks, Melissa.
Or the planning board? Thank you.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, so the local building inspector is charged with duties of administering the Massachusetts State Building Code. And there are no overlaps, no executive, managerial, or administrative oversight from the local building inspector with regard to the HDC or the planning board. And likewise, the HDC and the planning board have no executive, managerial, or administrative oversight of the building commissioner or the local building inspector.
Thank you. So for anyone with any potential concerns, essentially as a local inspector, by law, you're looking at very specific things and aren't influencing policy or management decisions at the Plus department.
Correct. Yeah, the positions, the service, all of these are in service to the town, of course, but the respective services are partitioned off in their duties.
Great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, or is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? All those in favor by roll call: Melissa Murphy,
aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
I'm not sure. Go on.
Kristie
I'm thinking about it
Ferrantella.
still.
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Matt?
I'm going to abstain. I just, it isn't what Steve thinks. And I love Steve and I want him there and I'm fine with it. The question is, what do we think? You know, the question is, do we think that is there a conflict? Are there potential conflicts? Do we have conflicts in some of these other boards and areas? And increasingly, there are some situations where we seem to. And so the question I have is, as a board, as an administration or board, what are we going to do when those crop up and how are we going to deal with them?
I mean, that's a broad question. I think in this case, the HDC inspection, the HDC is the architectural approval. The building code has its own set of rules, and the HDC staff signs off on the HDC portion of the building permits, where the building code is entirely independent of that in terms of those sign-offs. So I don't see a conflict here. And for all of the other reasons that there's no administrative oversight and so forth.
And that's
but I mean, there may be questions on other things. I'm not sure.
Well, and that's why I'm bringing it up as a broad question. The question we should be discussing whether we see it, and you've answered it in your mind. There is interpretation. Any inspector has interpretation. There's the rules, but then there's how do you interpret the rules and what do you do when you make the inspection? What things do you look at? You could send two people in and get two different answers. So I think it's a bigger issue. We can talk about it another time. And like I said, I like Stephen. I'm glad he's there. But I think that some of the rumblings I'm hearing, it's not so clear in some cases. And I'll talk to you further, and we'll put it on the agenda.
So sorry, are you abstaining or are you saying
That
no?
motion carries 4-0.
I'm abstaining and making a point.
Thank you for your review and determination.
Thank you, Stephen. Next up, we have application introduction review of applications for a number of committees. I'm going to do what I did last week and run through these, make sure everyone knows who's applied for the second round, and invite anyone who's here that wishes to introduce themselves, or if the board wants to ask any questions of anyone. So I will just begin. Historic District Commission Associate. We have one seat available and one applicant. It's the incumbent, Carrie Thornwell. I'm not sure if Carrie's here.
Carrie had a conflict and was unable to attend tonight.
Okay. Next up, we have the Nantucket Affordable Housing Trust. We have one seat available and one applicant. It is the incumbent, Brooke Mohr. I did see that Brooke was on here.
Yes, hi, Dawn.
Hi, Brooke, go ahead.
I just wanted to say how much I've enjoyed my service on the Affordable Housing Trust these last 4 years, and I hope very much to be reappointed so that I can continue the work that we've been doing toward helping our community solve the housing crisis. Thanks.
Thank you, Brooke. Nantucket Historical Commission, we have 3 seats available and 4 applicants. We have Milton Rowland, known as Mickey Rowland, incumbent, Thomas Murray Montgomery, also an incumbent, Angus McLeod, an incumbent, and Linda Williams is a new applicant. I will also note that there is a seat available as an NHC alternate that no one has applied for. Is there anyone here? I think that maybe all of them are here, but I can't see where everyone is on my screen. Tom Montgomery, I see you first.
I'd like to make a statement.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Thank you. It's very important to me to be a member of the Nantucket Historical Commission because Nantucket is in my blood. I have always had Nantucket's best interest at heart. Now that I have the time, giving back by volunteering means a great deal to me. My Nantucket family lineage dates back to 1734. My great-grandfather, William H. Chase, whose portrait is in the Whaling Museum, was a boat builder, having learned the trade from Brasilia Burdett, who built whaleboats down on Old North Wharf. It is because of that family background that I became interested in Nantucket's history at an early age. I've studied and learned about the Nantucket Wampanoags, the founders, whaling, Nantucket's architecture. I have extensive knowledge and 35 plus years of experience in preservation carpentry, as well as a working knowledge of Nantucket history and the fabric that makes it so, plus having attended the North Bennett Street School in Boston's North End with courses in woodworking and preservation carpentry. I'm retired now, but when I was in business, my company was involved with a number of preservation projects. The 1757 Christopher Starbuck House at 105 Main Street, the West Brick, the 1852 Coffin School on Winter Street, Union Lodge on Lower Main Street, and the 1753 Richard Gardner House on Westchester Street. Working on the Richard Gardner House, Jessica Whittle, the owner at the time, had placed the house in a conservancy with many restrictions. We had to work with what was then known as SPNAA, the Society for the Preservation of New England Antiquities, now called Historic New England. We received a letter of commendation from SPNAA for the carefully executed preservation work we performed to the property. We also did a major preservation project at the First Congregational Church, the Old North Vestry, Bennett Hall, and the church parsonage on Center Street. These are only a few of the historic houses and historic preservation projects I have been involved with over my 35 plus year career as a historic preservation carpenter and project supervisor. But I think you get the point. As far as being a board member on the Nantucket Historical Commission, I am an active participant in the discussions and have only missed one meeting in the 2 years we have been formed. I was chosen to act as the representative and consulting party for the NHC with the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, the people presenting Vineyard Wind's Section 106 review. I've worked on a subcommittee of the NHC to update National Historic Landmark surveys with the Massachusetts Historical Society by creating areas and neighborhood surveys. I've worked with a group of commissioners to become a CLG, a certified local government. For those who don't know what a certified local government does, a CLG maintains a system for the survey and inventory of historic properties, and they do this by either beginning or continuing a Massachusetts Historical Commission approved process to identify prehistoric and historic properties within the boundaries of the community. I was involved in helping develop a guide for the possibility of the use of roundabouts by having done research on the subject of other places and parts of the world that use roundabouts. I've worked on a subcommittee to come up with the process to apply to the Massachusetts Historical Commission for grant money to fund survey work for individual historic structures in the old historic district and other places. We got the grant, 20 grand, the maximum they award. And the Massachusetts Historical Commission matched it with another 20,000. I am currently working on identifying important historical items and icons along the Sewer Force Main number 3 route through town, a very historically sensitive part of town. After having walked the entire route, things such as old curbstones, of which there are many, old brick and brick sidewalks, fieldstones that make up entire sidewalks, huge trees whose roots have heaved up sidewalks and parts of the edges of streets, granite and cement triangular and square bollards. These types of things all need to be preserved. If I am reappointed to the NHC for another term, I will work as hard as I have these last 2 years for Nantucket and its community-wide planning. I will do my best to help identify and preserve the historic places, buildings, structures, sites, objects, and districts that are significant to Nantucket's history, culture, architecture, and archaeology that are worthy of preservation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Mickey Rowland, I see you next on my screen.
Hi, everyone. I feel that after 40 plus years of living and working here in Nantucket, my knowledge and experience are of value to the Historical Commission. The NHC has gotten a lot done in the past 2 years, but we're in the middle of working on important projects, so it would be very beneficial for the group to remain intact. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Angus MacLeod.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all. We've had a great 2 years with the Nantucket Historical Commission. The NHC is the 5th preservation board that I've joined on the island, and I've worked in preservation through design and building for a good number of years, over 30 years. It really is my life's work, and I appreciate the work that I'm able to do specifically through the NHC, and I look forward to continuing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Linda Williams.
Hi, I don't think I'm a stranger to anybody. I'm in a t-shirt in my house. We don't have any air conditioning in here, so I'm going to remain not visible for the time being. I've always been interested in historic preservation. My family started coming here in 1929. I do have relatives buried out there in the 1600s here. Finney's Lane in Hyannis is my 10th great grandfather. We established Barnstable. So I've always been interested in the history of our family involved in these areas, as well as the architectural significance when I was on the HDC, which has a very specific focus, which is the architectural significance and appropriateness. The NHC has a different task. There's a lot more outside of a structure that is historic on Nantucket, and that should be looked into and preserved to keep what's special about Nantucket. I've had 25 years, I guess now, with the HDC as a representative before them, as well as a member. I've been here 48 years year round and 66 years my entire life coming here. So I have an appreciation of every single section of Nantucket, and I know every single inch of this island. I can't tell you some of the new roads, but I know the island. I know how municipal government works. I think I can be effective in working cooperatively with the DPW and the town on tasks, validating historic aspects of town, for trying to preserve those, making sure that the sidewalks are done correctly, the roads are done correctly. It's not just architecture, it's the whole island that needs to be preserved. And I'd like a chance to serve on the board. I'm not on the HDC anymore, but I do have that background, as well as 38 years in municipal government. So I would love to continue to serve on the Historical Commission. Thank you. Oh, yes, and I do agree, we do need to update these surveys. These surveys are out of date and they're not necessarily accurate, and we really should start indexing all of Nantucket's historic aspects. I agree with Tom.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you all, and just keep in mind that there is an alternate seat that has no applicants at the moment. Planning board alternate, there were no applicants, but the incumbent David Callahan has put in his application late. That's just a note, because that won't be able to be appointed until the next round. So that his application will be held. Real Estate Assessment Committee, 2 seats available, 2 applicants. Thomas Barada and John Brescher have both applied, both incumbents. Roads and Right-of-Ways Committee, there are 3 seats available and 2 people have applied. Edward Gillum and Nelson Eldridge incumbents, and Leslie Forbes has not reapplied. So there's an open seat at the moment. Scholar.
Sorry, are you having the
Sorry, I'm just reading through instead of recognizing people. I really apologize. I'm getting ahead of myself. So Real Estate Assessment Committee. I know Thomas Barada is here. Did you want to say a couple of words?
Yeah, I've been on the Real Estate Assessment Committee since it was formed as a result of some of the yard sales that were done back in the day. And yeah, I've just been trying to keep an eye on in regard to these properties to make sure that they stay open for public access or neighborhood access of existing trails and stuff like that. And I really, before COVID started, I was trying to get the board together and try to talk to you board members to try to come up with a new pricing in regard to these, so that we're actually paying that the new lots that are being created, that are being sold to the abutters, are actually more of a real cost of what the town puts into to actually do this program, because some of these lots take 5 years, 8 years, the land court, the town looking stuff up, and there's a lot of man hours that's not accounted for. And yet we sell these for a penny on the dollar of what the value is. And I think it needs to be revamped, because the town has been subsidizing this. And I know the program's winding down, but I think we need to make this more valuable for the town to actually get the costs back of what we put into it. And as far as the property being put on the tax rolls, that doesn't cover the costs even in the long term. So I would like to try to get together with you guys and talk about that in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I don't see John Brescher on my screen. Next, is Edward Gillum or Nelson Eldridge present?
No.
Okay. Scholarship Committee. We have 4 seats available and we have 5 applicants. We have incumbents Lee Saperstein, Leslie Forbes, and Margaret Detmer. And we have new applicants Catherine Manchester and Rebecca Woodley Oliver. I see Lee. Can I go to you first?
Madam Chair, you certainly may. To you and to members of the Select Board, thank you for this opportunity. Several years ago, I noticed that the Scholarship Committee had an unfilled vacancy. And based on my experience as faculty member, department chair, and dean, where I had been sorting through if not dozens, hundreds of applications for scholarships. I said to the town, I'd like to help. Intriguingly, the town scholarships have some interesting criteria. I'm accustomed to merit-based grades and other credentials, or need-based family finances. The town scholarship committee also looks at whether or not the applicant has something to offer to the town afterwards. And so it's been a steep learning curve for me. I will point out that the scholarship committee operates intensively for a short period of time. It's about to come up. We, if I'm selected, will review 50 to 75 applications and try and make decisions very quickly based on the money available. The money comes from the scholarship donations that people make when they fill out their real estate tax returns. There's a form there. I remain interested in the young. Just as a side note, in the next 2 Saturdays, I will be sitting as a selector for something called Rise for the World, which is going to be a very, very rich $500,000 a candidate for up to 100 young 15 to 17-year-olds worldwide. Never done it before, but it'll be interesting. Working on the scholarship committee here is an opportunity to meet and help the young of Nantucket. Madam Chair, if you'll indulge me, last week the doctors were seeking out some challenges with my body. They found them. I'm in great shape, but I missed the opportunity to talk about the Cemetery Commission. I'm a candidate for that as well. It is uncontested. And so let me just leave the select board with the understanding that our 9 public cemeteries are the last pieces of the common and undivided lands of the town and county of Nantucket. They have never been registered. They've never been conveyed. And the Cemetery Commission is working aggressively with DPW to make sure that they're well maintained and that any challenges or legal problems are dealt with. One of the things that will be happening soon is restoration of the memorial stones, the monuments. And so, having said it's uncontested, I think it's my duty to stop right now and answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Lee. Leslie Forbes. Oh, Leslie, you're still muted.
I think I'm clear now.
You're good now.
I am looking forward to being reappointed. In an earlier life, I was a college counselor for the high school kids, helping them not only choose their schools, but craft their applications. I've read a lot of applications and helped kids understand what their goals are and what their needs are in terms of finances. I've also worked with universities and with companies recruiting people. So I've been on the other side of the desk where I actually was reading applications and making decisions about who was going to join. So I have I love having that viewpoint of both sides of the application process. I use my experience in reading applications and helping students match their goals and their needs every time we're in the scholarship committee. I was quite active, and still am quite active in tweaking and redoing first and now retweaking the application so that students can present themselves in the best way possible and that the committee can understand the students as much as we can. And like Lee said, it's just such a joy to be able to meet students in a sort of oblique way, but to meet Nantucket students and to help them along their way. And you do see them. I mean, 2 years later, 3 years later, 4 years later, it's great to go into the drugstore or a restaurant or the hospital and see these kids who you made some small difference in. One thing I'd like to add to Lee's point about the source of the money for the scholarship committee, we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge Jamie Ranney's contribution, which was large, allowed us to be able to move our donation, our scholarship help from $50 to a couple $1,000 to kids. And that came from Jamie's triathlons that he ran, and he donated money from that. And that still is carrying us far and wide, much farther than contributions that come in through property tax bills. So he deserves a round of applause for that. So I hope I will be reappointed. I would love to stay on this committee. It's just a joy to get to help Nantucket's youth.
Thank you, Leslie. I see Rebecca Woodley Oliver.
Hi, Madam Chair. Thank you. And hello to members of the board as well. I just want to thank you all for your time this evening. Just by way of brief introduction for anyone that doesn't know me, I'm Rebecca Woodley Oliver. I'm a Nantucket native and a year-round resident. I grew up on the island. I graduated from Nantucket High School in 2011. I attended college at High Point University in North Carolina, where I received dual degrees in political science and international relations. I graduated in 2015, and after college, I came back home to live and work. I'm interested in the scholarship committee because I am unfortunately all too familiar with the burden of college expenses these days. And I would love to have a hand in helping our local students alleviate some of the stresses of these costs. My college experience was invaluable, but also incredibly expensive. And I know costs are only going up for students these days. So I think it would be really wonderful to know that I was able to have a hand in making a difference for local students who are also so excited about higher education. I also think I would like to serve on the committee to set an example for my peers that there are great opportunities to be involved with local government and local interests. I think my age group is great about taking interest in national issues, but not so much at a local level. And I think there's a lack of representation of younger people on local committees and boards. So I think I could also be a valuable addition just as sort of a younger voice. And I think it's really important to give back to the community that you live in, especially somewhere like Nantucket, because I was fortunate enough to have grown up here and have gotten so much from the island myself. So I think it's great to have the chance to be able to give back somehow. In my job, I spend a lot of time reviewing different types of applications and submittals, checking them for accuracy, making sure various requirements are met. So I think this would be super useful in reviewing applications for scholarships. And I also spent a couple of years as a staff liaison for the Capital Program Committee. So I am well versed in sort of the general proceedings of local committees. I feel very prepared to dedicate the time and commitment that's needed to serve on this committee, especially because it's for such an important cause. Finally, especially in light of some earlier discussions, I would like to reiterate that while I am employed by the town, I'm submitting my application completely as a private citizen. And I do not feel my employment would be in any conflict with my job or the committee itself, because the two really have no overlap. So I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have, and I want to thank you all again for your time and for your consideration of my application.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have the Steamship Authority Port Council. Nathaniel Lowell has applied, and I see him on the screen.
Didn't know I was next. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just, every 3 years, I like to kind of try to say something to appreciate what, whoops, sorry about that. I appreciate very much your support in past boards back to 2004, and Flint and I got involved after Grace passed away. And, it's a work in progress. Everybody understands the steamship is an imperfect thing that is a constant, concern or constant, moving target for people. So just want you to know that Rob and myself are constantly trying to improve certain things. I get calls from so many different people. We work on things kind of separately. I have sort of my thing that I do and he has his, and our relationship with Highline has never been better, and that benefits Nantucket in ways that I think we've all sort of gotten so used to, we may not even know that it's happens, especially with sports teams and boat schedule alignments and things like that. Obviously, the latest issue, we come out of COVID and then we get hacked, and that is the most unbelievable thing. The Mashpee office is now up and running. They have all the data through the 16th of June so far, and it's getting, supposedly they're going to have more soon. So it is getting fixed, but it's one step at a time. But they're doing a great job rebuilding all the computers and servers and everything that goes along with it. So if anyone has any questions, otherwise I'll go back to dinner.
Thank you very much. I am looking to see if any hands are raised, but I haven't seen any questions. Next up, we have the Tree Advisory Committee. There were no applicants, but Ben Shampoo who is an incumbent, has put in an application late, so that will be held for the next round. Then we have the Zoning Board of Appeals, one seat available, and we have no applicants for that seat on the Zoning Board of Appeals. Zoning Board of Appeals alternate, we have one seat available, and we had no applicants, but again, Jeffrey Thayer, who is the incumbent, has put in his application late. So that will be held over to the next round of appointments. I don't think that there's anybody else on the screen that hasn't spoken. I mean, I will put out there the opportunity that if anyone who was not able to speak last week on their application, they could, and thank you, Lee, for doing that for us already. But I don't think that there's anyone else. I'm not seeing any hands raised. So thanks again to everyone who's applied. There's still some openings, so please start putting your names in for the next round if you would like. And the appointments are planned to take place on June 23rd. We don't have any items under the town manager's report tonight.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I do have one.
No, please add something.
It wasn't, I didn't really think about it until after town meeting, but I wanted to make some acknowledgements about town meeting. I wanted to thank the town staff and volunteers who helped make the putting on of this outdoor event a success. And I want to just focus on the people who put it together, not the warrant and not the items before the town meeting. That's a whole other thank you for a later time. But I wanted to acknowledge what a large amount of work it was putting on an outdoor town meeting. And I'm probably going to forget someone, and I hesitated even saying specific names, but some of these people really spent a lot of time and effort and hard work and stress getting through this. So I wanted to thank the following: Town Clerk Nancy Holmes, Assistant Town Clerk Laura Ramo, School Facilities Director Diane O'Neill, and may I say Diane was fabulous. There was a lot of worry on Diane's part about using the field there because of the infrastructure in the ground, the use of the fields. Were we going to go another day? Was it going to disrupt schedules? Please don't harm the irrigation system, many things, but she got through it, and we thank her very much for helping out. She really went above and beyond. All of the election workers and wardens, especially Frank Sardellis and his crew. Frank goes unnoticed a lot of times, but he is critical to putting on a successful town meeting. The workers that were there included Jimmy Perlman, Jerry Adams, Frank, Michael Day, Bobby Planzer, our bell ringer. We can't do much without him. And then the following workers that were lined up to work there: Ann Stock, William Greeter, Kathleen Greeter, Liz Flanagan, Sarah Ann Miller, David Bossy, Michael Day, I did already mention him. Mary Adams, Joe Sullivan, Gail Holgate, Kristen Wallace, Ruth Tonico, Nancy Moylan, Colleen McLaughlin, Suzette Brown, Carol Corkish, Hanukkah Campbell, Margaret Ann Fleming, Jean Grimmer, and Jen Carey. Also, our information technology officer, Karen McGonigal, and her staff, they spent a lot of time working on the electrical and the technology. The police department, specifically Lieutenant Angus McVicker and the officers who helped with traffic and parking. The Steamship Authority helped get our sound production crew over here. They could not get a boat reservation, so there was some intervening that had to occur, but they got them over here. That was Emergency Projections Inc. Sidebar on the sound. We got such good feedback about the sound that we are going to look into a sound production crew for even an indoor town meeting next year. Mark Feit and his staff from Options Technology for the e-voting program, NCTV for the live video, Maggie Stewart of Stewart & Company Events. Maggie was our event coordinator. She thought of many things we hadn't thought of, and often if something came up that she hadn't thought of, she wasn't thrown off by it. She just dealt with it. All of the vendors who provided chairs, tents, water, porta potties, Linda Peterson from the school who provided lunch for the town staff and other officials, Erica Mooney and Florencia Rulo from town administration. They helped get information out and just dropped everything when something was needed to help. And of course, our town moderator, Sarah Alger. I am going to give you a more complete follow-up as to what happens next after town meeting now with the articles that were approved. And by your meeting on June 23rd, we will know the outcome of the ballot questions at the June 15th election. So that will be helpful as well. And again, I really apologize if anybody was left out in the thank yous, but really there were a lot of people who made this a success. We got some very good feedback about it. And I think that even though there was a kind of picnic-like good humor atmosphere with an outdoor town meeting, which was very enjoyable, the stress of putting on an outdoor town meeting is not something we want to repeat anytime soon. So we are looking at ahead for an indoor town meeting next year, which, by the way, hopefully by your meeting on the 23rd, I will have some proposed or date options for the 2022 annual town meeting. So I just wanted to mention those things. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone. Select boards reports and comments. We need to have a little bit of a discussion regarding return to in-person meetings in light of the fact that I don't believe know yet if we can continue on Zoom.
Madam Chair, we don't know yet. Our feeling from various state officials is that it is most likely that the legislation filed by the governor to continue remote meeting allowances until September 1st is likely to pass, but we won't know with 100% certainty, of course, until it does pass. So Erica has been working very hard on what it's going to take to get back to in-person meetings. We definitely have a meeting space issue, and this was known before COVID came along, and that's why we have the arguably very hideous modular trailer at 131 Pleasant Street, which is slowly but surely getting improved, and that is going to be a location for meetings. But we are working on a way to continue somehow to allow remote participation by non-board members. Consultants say potentially the public, depending on if that is something the board wants to do. And it is a little complicated. It's sort of a hybrid model. And the towns we've talked to who have this hybrid model, I think, have mostly said it's not very easy. It's not very, it's difficult to put on and nobody likes it, but there isn't yet a real super good way to do it. So when you all talked previously about in-person meetings before the governor's announcement about May 29th, restrictions lifted, June 15th, state of emergency is over, you had talked about returning to in-person in the fall. So if you're all still wanting to do that, a potential option at this point is, provided the legislation is approved to continue remote meetings, you say, we agree that you would go back to in-person in the fall, obviously up to you, of course, but I wanted Erica to speak a little bit about what it is going to take to have this sort of hybrid model and or returning to in-person meetings, which is going to need to prioritize the regulatory boards. Erica.
Thanks, Libby. So I have been trying to schedule 10 regulatory boards, committees, and commissions, as well as approximately 30 non-regulatory boards, committees, and commissions. We do have the community room, which is the first floor meeting space in the public safety facility at 4 Fairgrounds Road. However, that is being used through the beginning of July for CSO and lifeguard training. So daytimes are off limits right now. Starting as of the 16th of June, I do have in-person meetings scheduled for a lot of groups, but that again is just, I'm trying to plan for both. So I literally am scheduling in-person meetings and hoping that we can stay remote for a lot of these. Some groups would prefer to be in person. So we need to work that out. But so far I've just been really trying to focus on the regulatory boards, and I've asked all the non-regulatory boards to please be patient, understand that they may need to be flexible, that their regular meeting schedules might not be able to be accommodated because we no longer have the second floor training room, which a lot of boards like the CONCOM and the HDC have used prior. So people are going to be potentially in new meeting spaces. We do have a very small conference room at the 2 Fairgrounds Road Plus building. Right now we're focusing on getting HDC and the HDC subcommittees in there, as well as NPEDC's BPAC. The DPW also has a very small conference room that I'm trying to get the 2 boards that deal with the DPW continuously, like Cemetery Commission and the Tree Advisory Commission, to be meeting out there. But otherwise it's really limited space. And so I've told a lot of non-regulatory that they may need to have a little hiatus for a bit, unfortunately. And I know that's not something that everybody wants to hear, but it's the reality of our meeting space situation. I have been working with IT and NCTV to look at how we're going to continue taping all these committees. We've all gotten really, really used to being able to participate via Zoom, and the public has been able to have some really great participation in these meetings that normally they wouldn't have. NCTV is short-staffed. It's going to be difficult getting all the meetings taped at the same time. A lot of meetings may need to be recorded and then uploaded to YouTube at a later time. Probably only a couple of meetings, maybe even just select board might be live. So it is something that we are still working on with them. And it's really hard to plan for both. We did do a little test to try to figure out how we're going to do this hybrid system, in thinking like, how are we going to get consultants to be able to participate who are off island? We did do a test at the community room, and it seems, you know, all of you will have to bring your own laptop because we don't have extras. And what we would do is have everybody sign into Zoom, and the consultants would be participating via Zoom. My laptop on my table is hooked up to the projector, so my Zoom will be projected to the screen, and I'll have a mic to my laptop, and we'll be communicating like that. We definitely need to do some more tests because I'm not quite sure how the presentations are going to come out that way. This is all new, and again, people are going to need to be patient while we work this out. But I think we're looking okay so far. The community room is going to be busy, and we do have a lot of people from the public also requesting to use that space. And right now we're really trying to get our town board committee commissions in there because they have a lot of work to do. And then we can try to space in any anybody from the public who usually likes to use that space around that. So I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Matt?
Yeah, just a couple things. First off, maybe the sound engineers, we did a hybrid the other day and the sound was the problem that we had on a hybrid like you're talking about, Erica. And so maybe if some sound engineers could help us, we could get the sound and Zoom would work in a hybrid model. That's one suggestion. And the other is a suggestion question. How about Wannacomet? There's a meeting space there. Is that available?
So Wannacomet, I failed to mention that is available, but we can't load it up because they also use that space. So we are working with the director there to see what boards, committees, and commissions can work there. And I did fail to mention, because we don't have filming capabilities in all these spaces right now, we did purchase an OWL camera. It is coming in next week, so we're going to start playing with it immediately. And essentially, it would be, we're going to try it out at 2 fairgrounds first. And staff, it would be staff initiated. The staff would turn it on at the beginning of the meeting, turn it off when we're done. And it wouldn't capture us like this, but it picks up on the voice. So whoever is talking, there's a little bit of a hesitation, but then the OWL camera will turn towards where that voice is coming from. So we're going to see how that works out. And if it works, we'll incorporate some of those. We've talked to the school. They are also going to be purchasing one of those OWL cameras. So we're looking at all manner of things. And then once the trailer at 131 Pleasant Street comes online, that's going to be a great benefit in terms of the meeting space pinch. But I don't think we're looking at that until the fall at the earliest.
Are there any other questions? I mean, I think that, Melissa?
Thank you, Dawn. Happy to hear your comments first. I don't have any questions, just a comment.
Oh, I was just saying we're in a little bit of a wait and see at the moment because unless everyone is certain that they want to jump right back to in person. I have mixed feelings because the public participation has been so phenomenal during this whole process, and we do want to make sure that we're properly set up to see what we can do in terms of a hybrid model. I have been hearing some feedback when the meetings are really large, it can be quite hard to manage for the board. But we may be able to do something. We'll probably need an additional staff person to manage if there were public raised hands coming in on Zoom. Or there might be some thought of, do we just want people who are off island that need to participate in the meeting to be able to come in on Zoom, and request that people who are on island come in person? But then there's a little bit of an equity issue there that I see, because it's the participation for people who need to be home with children and so forth has been so much greater during this. So I'm rambling a little bit, but I think that for us, it may be wise to just continue on Zoom for a little bit longer.
And if I could add, I mean, my hope is that the open meeting law provision is continued, and that we can continue for almost all boards, committees, and commissions through the summer, just to give us more time to do this. So we're planning that it won't, but we're hoping that it will get passed.
I would imagine it will, because we are not the only community that is up against this, and there are probably greater issues off island in some cases. Gary Beller has his hand up. I'd love to take a public comment. Gary?
Okay, thank you, Dawn. With respect to our committee, the Advisory Committee for Non-Voting Taxpayers, we hope that even though the governor's been talking about ending the virtual meetings in September for the advisory committee for non-voting tax for our seasonal taxpayers who are not on island portions of the year. It's been terrific for us to be able to have continual meetings for the last year. And so we're hoping that some kind of a hybrid solution is adopted so that we can continue meeting throughout the entire year and continue to try to offer our comments and thoughts about issues that the town is facing. One of our members, our vice chair, Peter Hall, has drafted an amendment, which I sent to Libby just today, that perhaps the state legislature might need to make a minor modification in the current laws, because right now, even though people are permitted to join a meeting electronically, their presence, if they're not in person, is not counted for quorum purposes. So we're unable to do any official business. And in past years, I've been on the committee for many years, our meetings usually ended in late September and didn't start again until June. We would love some hybrid solution to be offered, proposed by the town and hopefully accepted by the governor, so that those meetings can continue. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to express our concerns and our views. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Melissa?
Thanks, Don. And thank you, Erica, for putting such thoughtfulness into all of this. I agree with you, Don. I have mixed feelings. One, I do want to get back to being in person. I think the flow of the meetings and the conversation can just be improved on by just having a physical presence. But I do also see this as an equity issue, and I think it's an opportunity for the legislature and for us as a community to talk about how do we make public access and public participation easier. So if permitted, I would support a hybrid meeting through the summer. And I'm not sure that I would agree on limiting participation via Zoom based on location. I think we have to trust people that if they can make a meeting via Zoom and that's easier for them, then that's how they should do it. I think also the list of panelists who register to participate in meetings is not as typically as great as the attendees. And so, you know, I'm imagining a lot of people who want to participate who would otherwise be doing that as panelists will likely come in person unless there is a physical issue barring them from doing that. So I look forward to hearing about what happens. I look forward to seeing all of your faces. And I just want to add that I think one of the nice things about the outdoor town meeting was just the wonderful feeling everyone had of seeing each other again. There were community members I haven't seen in a really long time, and staff members I haven't seen in person. So it's going to feel good, but I think we have a lot of work to do in terms of making public participation continue to be high. So thank you.
Totally agree. Kristie?
Thank you. I just wanted to comment that I agree. We should try to wait as long as possible to be back in person, or at least have a hybrid if the governor allows. I think if it gives us time to kind of work out the kinks and see how a hybrid model could work, if we have that time, I would take it, making sure that we can continue providing the access. I mean, we've all touched on it. The public comments and the availability of the public to participate has just grown over the last year and a half. And I'd hate to kind of go back to the way things were and ruin that participation. Another thing that I think about when I think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I know I've mentioned this to a couple of board members, is putting the select board meeting back to 6 o'clock or at least past 5. I think it's really difficult. I know for myself, it's really difficult to make a 5 o'clock meeting, and especially if it's in person, I think that's going to deter people from running for select board in the future or being able to participate in our meetings. So I don't know if that's, you know, as of June 15th, we go back to 6 o'clock or something that we could discuss, but I do know that 5 o'clock is really difficult for working people to make a meeting. Thanks.
No, that's a good point, Kristie. Do you think that 5:30 might be feasible? I think that people have also liked, who have to get up really early to get kids off to school and so forth, have liked getting done a little bit earlier. But I don't know if maybe there's some middle ground thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think 5:30 could work. I've also thought about if there's things that we could either move to a more of a consent agenda item or something, so that if there's things at the beginning, that 3 people could handle. So if, myself or somebody was to arrive at 6, we wouldn't be missing some of those important agenda items.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So Jason?
Yeah, I won't try to repeat what everybody else is. I feel like I'm in the same, 5:30 is fine. I'd like to stay remote as long as possible to give us time to figure out that hybrid. If we have to go back, we'll try it, and we'll just kind of wing it as far as, as long as we can. It'll be probably clunky at first because there's things we just don't know. But I think hopefully we have some funding somewhere if it's equipment needed or consulting to make it happen. So I like the accessibility, what we have now. One thing I've noticed from town meeting and select board meetings, and this is me coming with a problem with no solution, so I apologize now, is the quality of the conversation for items that are at the end of town meeting or at the end of our select board meetings. And so we have to choose what goes in the first half versus once we get to 8:30, 9 o'clock, it's hard for staff, for participants, for board members to kind of take your time on a really important issue and say, like, what, we need to spend an hour and a half on this. Oh, it's 8:30. We've already been here for 3.5 hours. And we can table it sometimes, but then it's just we're in the same situation the next week and the next week. So I don't really know what the solution is of trying to put things at the beginning, at the end, and there's an equity issue there, like what goes in the beginning versus what goes at the end. I noticed at town meeting, when there's 200 people left still doing, which I think are just equally important issues, maybe not as controversial. So I think thinking about that with when we start and if there is an increased participation, which is what we want through the hybrid model, then we might have to start timing comments to maybe hear more people, right? We haven't had to really do that before, but if there's more people in person and there's more people online through a successful hybrid model, I don't know, I guess my question is, how do we have quality conversation on all of our topics over a 4-hour meeting? So that's just kind of what I've been trying to think of in this last year.
Matt?
I hadn't planned to speak on this, but I think what you're talking about, Jason, is it could be helped with a licensing board, a sewer board, a parking commission. We spend a lot of time, maybe a separate NRTA board. We spend a lot of time, or we don't spend a lot of time that we should on some of those issues. We don't have to, own all of that. And so I think, so I think some of it is a scheduling issue. Some of it's not keeping it all under us. Some of it is making sure that the recommendations we're getting are, fully baked and ready to go before they're put on an agenda. So I think there are ways to get this, to pare this down a little bit. I think that Brian has done, here's an example, Brian's done an amazing job on the budgets. I'm not sure that we need the budgets quarterly. We needed them a few years ago. Now we might want to be focusing on hiring and what is the hiring that's happening or something else. Like, use our time effectively for the issues that each department is facing and do it in a 3-minute, a 5-minute update on a regular basis on the items that are sort of pertinent, as they change. There's things like that I think we should be thinking about. So.
Thank you. It sounds like we're all having a lot of the same thoughts, and we kind of need to keep hashing this out a bit and wait to see what the governor does and the legislature do. And next week, the only meeting is actually in person. It's good for the swearing in ceremony. And then the next meeting wouldn't be until the 23rd. So let's just, I think, continue to work on what the plan is, and for now, plan for the 23rd to be a Zoom meeting, unless we can't do it that way. Okay. Carrie Thornwell has just come on a little bit late, and I think she wanted to make a couple of comments on her application, if everyone doesn't mind me going back to that quickly. Good evening, Carrie.
Hi, good evening. I'm really sorry I'm late. I just wanted to say I've really enjoyed being on the HDC as an alternate. I've had some good feedback, and I feel confident moving forward to serve for another 2 years. I think the alternate position is for. That's really all I have to say.
You're committing to 3 years.
3 years, okay.
No.
That's fine. I thought it was 2, but what's another?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Carrie. Does anybody have any questions for Carrie? Okay. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, and I apologize
before we end it.
Okay. Thanks.
So are there any board committee reports this evening? Matt?
Just another reminder, Coastal Resiliency is on the 29th at 3:30. There'll be a public meeting in case people didn't hear Vince earlier. There's also a pre-meeting form that's online that you can fill out. That's, sort of to set up prior to the meeting. I think anyone that is interested and should do that. That's number one. Next week, when we talk about it, I'd like to talk about setting up a committee for there's a lot of good thoughts, things that we need to solve that came out of the discussions on Article 90. I would like to find us, have a way to sort of bring those sides together and see what those are. I talked about that prior to town meeting, whether one side or the other prevailed. I would like us to think about that and put that in place. I think we should talk about the field house and do something with that, whether it's scaling it down, rebidding it, begging people to bid real numbers. I think that's something that's came out of town meeting in my mind as a priority.
This is all scheduled for the 23rd, just so you know, for all the town meeting follow-up.
Right, but I want to make sure that I'm prepping us, so we're thinking about it. The other one is, when will we discuss I'm getting complaints about some of the downtown seating, et cetera. And I think that when are we going to have that as an agenda item? Is that 23rd as well? Outdoor seating, I'm having people complaining about some of that.
No, that's not on for the 23rd. The 23rd was for town meeting follow-up.
Okay.
I thought we had extended the outdoor seating through the end of the season, but that's things can come forward on a case by case, but you'll have to let me know what those items are.
I'll talk offline, and we may have a couple issues there that we'll want to address sooner rather than later, but we'll see. And that's it. Thank you.
Libby?
Just quick clarification, Matt, when you said Coastal Resiliency Committee upcoming meeting, did you mean the meeting Vince was talking about? Okay, because I think that's the 24th, not the 29th.
All right.
Yes, correct.
Okay, just so people know. Thank you.
Never mind. I put it in my phone wrong. Oops.
Well, now you know when it is, so that's good. Jason?
I just have a question for the June 23rd meeting. We'll be doing our committee appointments, and if that's remote, will that be similar to how we did it last year? We email. Can you just review that really quick, if that's okay, during select board comments?
Yes, I believe that it would. Erica, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So we would follow the same process that we did last year, where instead of voting by paper ballot, you would be voting by email, and not in advance. It would be in real time, where you would email me. I would then read your votes back to you, and you would all verbally confirm what your vote was. And then we would tally the votes, and whoever received the most votes would get that seat. So
Does that answer your question, Jason?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure the public's ready for that, and so we have our screens and emails ready to go.
Are there any other committee reports? We did have another work group meeting for Harbor Place, and we're just continuing to work with the engineers and with the owners group to come up with some planning ideas to try and move that forward. That was where we actually tried the hybrid. So that was a good learning experience. It was a smaller group than our regular meetings, but we did have our consultants from off island, and it's really convenient to be able to bring consultants and town council in that way. But there are some audio issues. Oh, Gary Beller, before we go to an adjournment.
Yes, just one more comment. When you were talking about the issue of continuing virtual meetings, you said we were going to be waiting for what the governor's office finally issues over the next several weeks or not. It would be my hope that, in view of what I heard this afternoon, there seems to be a sense that many of us and many of your colleagues would love to see a continuation of the ability to meet virtually as well as in person. And therefore, my suggestion is, instead of just waiting for the governor's announcement, we should at least ask our representatives to, or I don't know if we speak to the governor's office directly or we do it through our representatives, but suggest that a message be sent to the governor that this would be something that they ought to continue for the next several months and not end in September, because people have gotten used to relying on it and it seems to be working well. I appreciate
Gary,
it.
we have already said that, but we can definitely continue to say that. Erica?
And I just wanted to note too, extending it, the governor's intent of extending it to September 1st was that so it would give the state time to change the open meeting law to make those accommodations if they so choose.
And there may be different accommodations made for regulatory boards compared to smaller advisory committees and so forth. There may be some different things that come out of this, and I hope that there are. Matt?
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call. Melissa Murphy?
Aye.
Jason Bridges?
Aye.
Matt Fay?
Aye.
Kristie Ferrantella?
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening.